Okay, backstage closed. Okay, bloody hell. I need a chair.
A nice
Nice,
chair.
comfy, cushy chair somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to the stream in 3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody. Welcome back to Age of Awæcnian, Soulful Stories Unveiled. So excited that Flea and I now get a chance to share more of our stories through, I suppose, that intuitive connectedness that we have, what's alive for us. We love chatting with different guests about, their awakening experiences, how they've overcome different obstacles and challenges, to really listen in back to your heart, back to soul. And it's really beautiful that we get to have this space to share parts of our lives with you too. What are you looking forward to with this year and the shows that we've got happening, Flea?
This year, as you said, the obstacles and challenges, this is the thing that has been coming up. And knowing that there is full momentum, where are my words? Like everything is go ahead at the moment, and I can start to see, on the schedule and the planner, that everything is getting booked up, and almost like a panic is starting to happen. It's like, but I've been doing nothing for so long. How am I going to then find the energy to be able to do these things and to actually fit back into society in a normal way? I'm so used to being in my little hermit mode where I can jump online and do the things I need to do, but most of it's here. So that interaction and going back out into the world is kind of exciting. It's a little bit scary. I'd say it's a challenge. It's something that I know over the past couple of years with the full on development of my awakening. So I've always been quite aware and quite in tune with my spiritual side. As I grew up, I challenged that, and I tried to use the logic of my brain to fit in. I wanted to fit in. I just wanted everything to be normal and pretty and, follow society's rules and get the house and the family and the kids and do all things. And as the universe has a way, it popped in and went, no, that's not going to happen. Let's destroy the family. Let's break it apart. Let's throw you out on your own, give you a new challenge. And, that's split family life. That's this new reality. And it did throw me. It threw me away from all of the people I knew. All of my friends and family that were once around me were gone, and I was all on my own. And having to deal with that really makes you go inside, and it makes you comfortable with being on your own. So I love the fact that I've had this time to actually sit back and go, who am I? Now that I can take away all of society's standards, it's like I don't have to be this. I don't have to dress the way I was told to dress. I don't have to, be in places at certain times. And that has had its challenges and its moments and its guilts and shame that has been brought down upon me because of society's rules. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it's exciting to feel that something else is coming from this. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's going, but just knowing that it has to get better. Things
Yeah.
always get better. So it's just in knowing and trusting that, and that's so exciting. I love
Oh, I
it.
love that. I love all those pieces and the knowing and yet unknowing, or not knowing. It's that dance, isn't it? I always think back to the parts of my life where I've created something amazing out of nothing. And those creations, whether it be in a school setting or a musical or production or something in the class with a group of kids, or even like my own home and creating things, it's like that started from like the resources around us, like the materials, people. And when you step into that, well, let's get excited about creating something, the people come on board, and then you start co-creating, and then that's magical in itself. And we were talking about obstacles before, and I feel like last year again was a big year of taking big leaps and going within as well, in a different way, but similarly as well to you. But the time isn't really the thing. The lessons can be really quick and short for some people, take a little bit longer or a little bit longer. And in the end, you already feel or know what the other side is because it is now. And it's like holding that thought pattern, that belief, that energy, and you feel it in your body. And so for me, shifting out of the 9 to 5 every day, or it wasn't 9 to 5, it was more than that, in the school system, doing all the dance programs and all the things, that was hard. And I know we spoke about it last year, and Flea also got to hold me in that as well, to shift those old parts of myself to just let fall away, which has taken a time to grieve and to allow to be felt.
Mm.
And these inner obstacles, like our own limitations, our own parts of what we thought was our identity or self, you know, does take time to nurture and care and go within and question, like you said. And there's a point where the questioning stops, where you start to really listen more, and then things
Mm.
shift. And I'm noticing that now with other close people in my life who are going through similar things that we've gone through and are feeling the depth of despair. And if you're listening in and you're resonating, give us some love hearts. We know what that feels like. And this is why we created this space. This is why we've created our
Mm.
course safely.
Just the awareness, like purely, and that is our first pillar that will be released very soon. So the awareness pillar, where we just look at all of those internal beliefs, all of the systems, all of the theories, all of the behaviors and the patterns and the habits. It's like when we start to unbreak all of the learnings, the teachings. It's basically like an unschooling platform. So having to go back and challenge well, why do you really hold on to this belief if you know deep down inside of you it's not serving you? We have these patterns of behavior because we've been taught them, and there's so many different theories, brain patterns, and like the language is extensive. You could go down the science route, down the mathematical pathways, into all the physics and the biology, into theory. Like I'm one of the spiritualists. I've read everything because part of my journey, and I guess reclaiming the self that I already had. So I was spiritual to begin with, and then had to sort of hide that. So in the reclaiming, I've had to try and find ways to be able to explain to different people the concepts that I know within me. And people are like, "Oh, but you don't know that. You must have saw it somewhere. You must have read it something." It's like, no, I know it within me. It's a certainty. And my objective here has been to learn how to express it in multiple different ways. So in our course, we have multiple different ways. There's text, there's theory behind it. There's a little bit of humor because, the personal stories really count. Who we are really counts at the core of it, and the way that we look at our behaviors and our patterns, that all comes back to the self. And the only way to teach that is to demonstrate it, is to stand up and show and lead by example. Like you would have noticed, I stuffed up. I couldn't get my words out. I'm live on a global broadcasting system to many, many different platforms. Didn't work out that the minute you go from backstage to in stage, you can hear everything. So on our little banner, we had a little conversation about my uncomfy chair. I'm on a high, rocky, swingy chair. So just letting you know, these stuff ups happen. These are the obstacles and challenges that, I could have sat here in fear and go, "Oh, I'm not going to talk anymore." And, I could have let that anxiety overtake me. And once upon a time, I would have. I was the shy, quiet, I'm not going to use my voice, I'm not going to stand up and actually say, no, I know different. And this is the beauty of a spiritual awakening, of coming back to yourself, of reclaiming your identity. Nobody has to like me. It really does not matter whether you like me, whether you find me appealing, attractive, whether my voice is annoying, whether it's pleasant, whatever. None of that is my concern. And now I'm whacking everything. My concern is whether or not I'm being authentic in myself, and that what I say I know to be true, and I always speak with honesty and integrity. Like, that is my core nature. This is the one thing that I don't know anybody that is believed to be different about me. And, sometimes it is to a point. It's to a, it becomes a fault almost, because when you're direct and you're honest, you will trigger people. And this is one of the experiences I've had to learn. And I've even done it with you, Marie, haven't I? It's like there's times where it's like, why won't you just do it? It's like, well, if we're going to go back and we're going to look at, the situation, we've actually got to ask the whys. And
Yeah.
that's what we do. We ask the whys, the hard questions.
Yeah,
And it's honest.
it is. And I love that about you. And part of me also doing the work and noticing my emotional bandwidth to be able to, I talk about unconditional love and being the blessing. And it's like, okay, how do I notice that trigger and that feeling, allow that to be felt, but still honor the person because they're expressing this to me for a reason. So what is it that I'm doing that is, in reciprocation to that is something that I also need to just face and look at and go, hang on, okay, what can I shift? Is that me? And just allow that to go, okay, be felt with non-judgment. And that non-judgment piece takes time to lean into and master. And there's still pieces of judgment, but I've noticed even in my own progression of growth that my energy is shifted in how I deal with heightened situations
Mm,
and conversations or moments that could have been turned from the past, going from yelling or it's that victim mentality to allowing it to just be as it is, what's been said, how the feelings are with no like that's bad or that's good, or like just to let it be as it is
mm.
without
Do you
story.
find
And
most of Do you find
sorry.
most of your judgments now internal? It's like it goes to
Yeah.
be like, well, why am I doing this? And it's really interesting to have a debate or a conversation or a conflict with someone. And then the whole time you're sitting there going, okay, so what am I learning from this? What judgments am I perceiving? How are my reactions in this moment and my thoughts and my feelings being created by myself? And it's all
Yeah.
this internal
Yeah.
judgment that you're
Yeah.
left with. It's kind of
It's an interesting concept when we talk about being compassionate and thinking about others versus looking at self and people then perceiving selfishness, and when we think about our emotions and how we can control, navigate, be able to manage our physical body, our nervous system, of how we then experience others is sacred selfishness. There's a sacredness and a devotion to unlocking parts of yourself to then be of service in a higher capacity for your children, for your loved ones, for your friends, for your community. And so I was listening to this podcast yesterday on Know Thyself. I know we both love this podcast. There are so many
that was
amazing
as
guests.
well.
And I suppose it's been a big inspiration of like why we started this, and to have conversations with people that are just sharing their stories, sharing their life, sharing their perspectives. And there's medicine in that. There is healing in that when we listen, when we resonate. And yeah, that inspired me. But this woman was talking about, because she's a psychologist, was talking about sacred selfishness, that desire
Mm.
to, know that she can do things on her own because she had kids, she didn't have a partner, and she's like, I'm going to be, a strong woman on my own, but still noticing that she does desire and want to have that masculine to hold her and to be there, and then she started talking about the feminine and the masculine energies and roles, which is different from feminism, different from these isms and things that are out there, because it's, again, understanding patterns and energies with the, when we look at feminine, masculine, yin and yang, light and dark, it's looking at the energetic patterns versus the societal constructs of how we be and feel in the world and do, which there are overlaps, but there are differences that I think people, I suppose, misinterpret. And as humans, in our need for understanding, we can easily misinterpret things. And so, even in our intimate relationships, communication and understanding each other does come back to harnessing our own emotional bandwidth and understanding of self so that we can better clarify, communicate, question, pull people up, soften back in and go, oh, I get you. All comes back to that and how because we are relational beings.
The funny thing was, is as you were talking, the shadow card came out, and I was thinking, what is, this sacred selfishness is very much our shadow side. And a lot of people, and you see on the internet, a lot of people talking about the shadow side as something that you need to release, something that's like wrong with you. It's the trauma that you're clinging to. It's the labels. It's none of that is your shadow. Your shadow is actually a part of you that needs to be embraced, because it's your warning system as to what your body no longer needs, requires, or is satisfied experiencing in this reality. And, the beauty of that shadow term is how versatile it is. Like, if you think of shade going from the darkest black to the lightest light, there's many different variations of issues, of problems, of those conflicts that pop up. And dependent on that scale, some of it's good. We do have a double negative in a sense where, bad can be good. We can experience good things through what is technically considered bad. Like if we push ourselves in a marathon, our body's going to burn and the muscles are going to tear. We're going to feel exhausted and need to recover. But it's a good bad. And that's those labels you were talking about earlier. It's like, why do we have to experience them as good or bad? Let's just have a look at it for what it is and what potentially we're meant to be taking out of it. And that's where we go down into that core of ourself, which is the shadow work. It is that sacred selfishness where we're looking at what it is that we need, because if we don't understand what we need in a relationship, when your partner's like, well, what do you want from me? I don't know. Just to love me? Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to love me more? What is love to you? What are these terms that we throw around? And this is the major conflict. And I've been working with a lot of families on conflict resolution and coming together to, understand each other's language for their boundaries and the variation that comes with that. Most people are saying the same thing. I don't like the double standards. I don't like that, I'm not getting enough time or whatever. All of the complications are the same. The only difference is we each have a different way of expressing what that is. So for me, my boundary might be, get away. And it might come across as a little bit nasty and, you're in my space and I'm going to push you, and it might feel threatening to somebody. But that is my boundary. That is me saying no. And it's not until we actually stop and say, okay, well, why are they doing that? Why do I feel discomfort? Well, obviously that energy is pushing out. And this is what we're trying to describe. All of our language, doesn't matter which variation we go through, down to symbology, everything is describing our emotional capacity to feel and experience. Absolutely everything. If I was to sit there and go, there was nothing, well, it would mean nothing. It would never ever be repeated because everything would be nothing. So it's like, oh, I hit my hand. Oh, it hurt a little bit. Do I like it? No. Will I do it again? Well, I just did. So, yeah. It's one of those things. But we have to label it. Now, for me, that little hurt is kind of like a pinch. It's kind of like a tickle. I could go down many different variations of language to describe what that little tap was. And the same goes for our conflicts. That little tap could be a really big thing inside that's not getting expressed clearly. And it gets trapped and it gets stored in our bodies. And, all we have to do is look at our physical form to see where our emotions are being trapped. I have a lot of grief and sadness, and I can feel it in the pulling of my face, and I have to remind myself that, okay, no, I'm not this person. This person is not who I am. I am not down and depressed. Sometimes I feel down and depressed, and I have to remind myself that. because that's the energy, and we wear it like a badge. Our bodies are a badge of honor to wear our energy for us. So if you're carrying a bit of extra weight, guess what? You're actually showing your wounds. You're showing where you need to dive deep into your shadow work, and you need to be a little bit selfish. If it's around your bum, then your stability and your core foundation, what you believe is safe for you, is not secure. You're going to keep holding that weight there until you can treat yourself and show yourself, not anybody else. Your partner can't do it for you. You know, if you've chosen the wrong person, then that's on you. The only person that can do that is you, and that's that selfishness, is going inside and saying, okay, my partner can't fix me. He cannot go back to when I was 8 and hug me and make me all better. It would be lovely if he could, but he can't fix me. And in that, I have to understand that when I'm feeling triggered and when I am in that 8-year-old energy of being scared and frightened, that he doesn't understand that. He can't understand that unless I express it and I say, I'm feeling really terrified and scared. I almost feel like an 8-year-old child and I want to run. And in that moment, I've expressed my needs in a clear way. It doesn't have to be about him. It doesn't have to be about any particular thing. This is the feeling that's coming up for me in this moment.
Yeah.
Address the feeling, and then you can address the conflict in a way that actually makes sense and is healing.
Yeah.
And that was a big
Yeah. And like in doing that, there is nothing to be fixed, right? Because it just is part of the experience. I know both of us have spoken about this before too. There was a time where I felt broken. I felt like I'd hit rock bottom and that the world was crumbling apart. And, many of us feel like exactly what you said, like they can't fix the situation I am in, like this is broken, I'm going to lose this. Why is everything crumbling down? When perhaps noticing these parts of ourselves, these shadow parts that are desiring to be witnessed and acknowledged, and just as it is, in being able to be recognized either through journaling or speaking to someone about it, it lightens the load, it lightens the burden. And the alchemy and the healing in that is doing something magical that perhaps, we don't realize in that awareness that it's growing. And interesting, like the 8-year-olds, our kids are the best teachers for showing us exactly, like being in the moment, in their desires, in their wants and their needs and their emotional body so strongly. And I was in a class with grade 3s yesterday, so 7, 8-year-olds. And interestingly, at the end of the day, part of the curriculum was looking at health and well-being and emotions. And so it was interesting. We were reading this beautiful book about this family, and we were talking about big emotions and siblings and friends. And interestingly, these kids know their strategies to calm down. But when we were talking about, what emotions are, and asking them a question was almost like a trick question. Is anger a good or bad emotion? Most were like, bad. It's bad to be angry is bad. I'm like, but is it? And it was like allowing their little minds that are developing and understanding this awareness of their emotions to go, well, our bodies and our senses are telling us things. We feel things for a reason. Emotions are not good or bad. They're just feelings. And it's healthy for us to feel it so we can get them out. And there are healthy ways to express anger. Let yourself cry. And it was interesting, even at that age group, hearing some of their little voices going, yeah, my mum says stop crying, toughen up. But what if we just let ourselves cry to the full extent, to just finish that act of crying or sobbing and let that energy out? Because then you don't need to cry anymore. And there's time then afterwards to go back and look at the feelings in a more logical space. But when, the science shows that when you are in those heightened emotional states, the emotional brain, the amygdala kick into the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of these responses that are there to protect us, right? And so our emotions become heightened, our bodies start sending the transmitters and all the things and the feeling sensors. Like, we're designed to cry, we're designed to express, but then how do we talk about ways of doing this that isn't of harm to other people, that we can still express and let it out in safe ways? And we were talking about with this little class about like screaming into a pillow or hitting a pillow, so we're not hitting our brothers or sisters or each other, and like talking to our families about it, talking to our parents about it, or allowing them to notice, like, I'm feeling frustrated. Like, could we use our words and tell mummy or daddy or someone, you're like, little Johnny over here, Mum, I've told him 5 times to stop hitting me, but he's not listening and I'm getting really angry. Imagine. I know there are kids that do that, but sometimes our emotions just take hold when we feel frustrated. And I see my beautiful daughter navigating big emotions and friendship issues and learning to feel the feels. And I catch myself as well going, oh, just calm down. And I've told her to stop crying because she's on the phone in a mid-game crying so loudly in front of her friends and other parents. And I notice those moments within myself. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm telling her the things not to, but I'm also being mindful that, is she, when we think about our kids, is she going to be the kid that other kids are like, she's too emotional, she's too much, too much. I don't want to play with her anymore because she cries every time,
And then that just shuts down all of her authenticity, all of her emotional capacity, and stores it all within her and
Yeah.
creates that disease that most of us now deal with. Most adults that are out in the world today have trapped, stored emotion that they're unaware of. And I would probably put a very large bet on the fact that most men aren't even aware of the emotional trigger, what it was that caused it, what it was that they're actually holding on to, because a lot of the times it's stuff from such a young age that has been de-dramatized to the point that it's non-existent. It's like, oh, that's just because I was like that type of kid or whatever. And it's those harsh punishments that actually stop us from being ourselves. It's like, okay, Dad, like, told me I'm too much and I'm too loud and I've got to get the F out of the house, so off I go. And that then started my pathway down hanging out with the wrong kids, doing this, blah, 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 and now my life's all crap. Well, it all come from that. The fact that you weren't allowed to express yourself way back when, and that you were too much and too loud and had to just piss off. Like, these are the things that, get trapped within our body. It's like, oh, okay, if the person that loves me and is here to support me, which is our parents, if they do not provide that safety and security to actually understand our feelings, it gets trapped and we become too much. And it is the 8-year-old limit where the identity comes into the being, where we start to see ourselves as, oh, okay, I'm outside of my family now. So the 8-year-old mind starts to go. So before 8, the 7-year-old brain and younger, it's all about the family. So what mum and dad does, what grandma does, whoever's in the household, that is their life. That is their learning. That is their experience. That is what they believe to be true for everything. So if dad's an avid football player, then, football means everything in life. If there's, a really strong passion within the household, that becomes their being. And then they hit 8 and they go, oh, hang on, actually, I'm going to school and my friends don't like me anymore. My games and my interests are changing. The language is changing. Everything's getting harder because grade 3 does. This is where standardized testing and NAPLAN and everything comes in to add to the pressure of, like, what are we doing right now? That mental mindset. And I've sunk. I said that would happen at the beginning.
Yeah, David Trump. Oh,
I'm like, I'm really cool again.
chance
That's all right.
thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And yeah, so this 8-year-old brain now has to find their identity. And what they do is they then challenge the family norms. It's like, oh, hang on a sec. At Sally and Joe's place, they get to jump on the furniture. And I remember having this problem with my own child because, like, we had fairly new stuff, but I was always what you buy, you respect, because it takes a lot to earn it, and you never know, how long you've got to keep it for, and you just don't know your circumstances. And from someone that grew up with lack, I respected my things, and I also respected other people's property. So when my kids went anywhere, it's like, no, you sit with your feet on the ground, you don't jump on it doesn't matter what anybody else does. These are the rules, because we don't know. And just because they do it does not mean that you should, because it's still not your property. And if you ruined it, you would feel bad, because it is their belongings. And I had a friend that was very different at the time. And, it was like, oh, no, it's a really old lounge. I don't care. My kids jump all over it. I said, no, I'm sorry. She needs to respect your belongings, because it is still your belongings. And for whatever reason, you've got it in your home right now. And whether or not you want it destroyed so you can replace it, well, that's on you. That's not on my child. And it's that understanding of, just respect for other people and their surroundings, but also like knowing that there's differences, and being able to teach your kids that, because that's when they come back in that 8-year-old mind, and it's like, but I get to do it here, and they get roll-ups there, and they get chips there, and they're on their devices until 9, 10 o'clock. It's like, no, just because other people do doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the value in teaching them about their emotions and about that quality of respect and understanding. And it should be happening while they're developing in that 1 to 7-year-old phase, to show the variations of how other people actually live, because that is that respect and that culture that they're taught for 12
Mm.
years.
Yeah.
Every single subject comes back to the attitudes, values, beliefs, and the cultural assumptions in the learning that they're doing. In some way, it is tied into some traditional practice or some other external form of doing and being, and they're not qualified at 8 to understand that. And
Yeah.
that's why they do generally lash out. That's why they don't want to be in school, because they don't understand where they fit. Everybody has to wear the same thing. They can't identify their friend groups because they're all in the same thing. It's like, well, Sally Jane wears pink. I like pink. It's an
Mm.
identifier. Our identity is what draws us into certain crowds and groups. If we go out into a club where, if you're not into goth, you're not going to go sit with the people that are, dressed head to toe in black with multiple piercings. Like it's generally a great indicator as to what it is that we are seeking within ourselves and within our groups, in that sense. I went off
Yeah.
track with that one again.
Yeah. But even, yeah, there's a few things that, resonated with there, with like the children, and how we also, it's that fine line of setting boundaries and respect and understanding of others, but also like noticing that they are still kids and 8 years old, and
Mm.
not putting the burden of them being able to think like an adult,
Yes.
and it's those reminders when we interact in those contexts and situations that then allow them to learn and then develop and grow. I think sometimes as parents,
Mm.
we do put a lot of expectations on our children to grow up quickly. They don't know
Yeah.
some of those things unless we tell them, you know, to share
It's
safe
modeled.
boundaries. Yeah, and to model that. And even like, with this world of gaming and online connection, which is also connecting but disconnecting, it's like I was asking Aya and her little friends, I was like, you're all in the same room together and you're playing the game, but you're in the room together. They're like, yeah, we're playing and doing this, but we just like to talk to each other. And I'm like, oh, and I did have a day of swimming and actually playing and interacting with each other. But I found it fascinating that even in the room when they're like on their devices, they still liked to be on that, but together. And when they're offline
Mm.
as well, it's like that connection that they're desiring. And but then it's interesting to see how they talk to each other on there, because no one's taught them how to text, when they use caps locks. That's like, why are you yelling at me? And you're like, that was a conversation last night. I was like, I don't know how to take caps lock off. I'm not yelling at you. I'm just saying this. And then And it's like these the misinterpretations where it's like,
Mm,
well, who's telling them how to talk to each other kindly? When somebody asks you something, are you going to respond? Because there's sometimes when I will ask something and no one actually answers her back because they're so in the game, like so immersed, and then she gets
mm,
frustrated, and then the things build and I see it, and I'm like, well, darling, don't play with them. But then there's the only ones online and she's feeling alone because we're doing something, and she's like immersed
yeah.
in it's an interesting and hard balance, you know, to know that that connection of friendship in immersed in an activity or something that is a safe game and they just want to play. And a lot of it's like dress up games, but then the way they're communicating with each other has been really interesting to navigate at this age. But again, it comes back to like we talked to her about noticing her emotions, noticing that if they're not speaking to you here or just saying, that guys, that's frustrating me, and I hear them talking this way and they can be very kind as well, but then they can also be very emotional. But they're like 7,
Mm.
8 years old. So it's having those constant conversations to help them regulate and navigate, right? One conversation isn't just going to do because it's the
And demonstrating conflict. It's like, okay, yeah, could you see, like Mummy and I were having this conversation and it got loud, didn't it? Can you see how it didn't really solve anything by getting loud? And once we calmed down, we were able to fix the problem. It's simple things like just pointing out the obvious for a kid. And I know this as very aware of my childhood, but noticing like the things that shouldn't have been seen. And this could just be a me thing because I do tend to notice things that other people don't, but that was part of my awareness. It's like having to be aware of your surroundings, who's coming in, who's outside, where everyone is, where things are. That constant change of your environment also makes you hyper aware because you're always readjusting. But like children see everything, like the things that you think you're hiding from them as you whisper or you sneak around the corners, children know. If you think that your child is, oh yeah, they're a little bit, no, they know. And they come up with their own little language and their own little games of, you know, how they interact with each other, and they share these little stories. And this is what then formulates into their online language, these little codes and sequences. And anyone that like grew up with Pig Latin or anything like that's how it starts. It starts with that, oh, we need to trick the parents so the parents don't know what we're talking about because we're talking about what they don't want us to know about. And this is that, this discourse and why language, why music, why everything keeps changing is because we're continually having to upgrade our language so that we don't want to know, don't understand us. And this stems from childhood. This is the language that we then take into adulthood, and it's the things that we don't say but we potentially act on. Um, and it's those behaviors that sometimes we're just unconscious of. We might do them to a point where we're unaware that we're being a little bit manipulative, or that we've dominated the situation by taking control of something. And all of these little habits come from that little language that we form as kids, and
Yeah,
our understanding of what we're hiding. We get taught to lie. We don't know how to lie to begin with.
it's interesting these micro moments in this more personal level. We see this on bigger scale in the political spaces and people that step into leadership that then again unaware of the impacts, or they are very aware and they still choose to do the wrong thing. And so even like noticing these conflicts in our inner lives, when we think about the conflicts that are happening at a world level, my goodness, that ripple effect is so profound. And I think about what's going on in Gaza at the moment and the conflicts at this next
Mm,
global level and the awareness. Like a lot of people in my world, I was aware of it, but then when I actually dived in, and thank you to my brother Stephen, who was like, are you actually really seeing what's going on here? Can you feel the
mm,
people? Can you feel the conflicts?
mm,
Can you feel like where their hearts are at? And then a part of me was like, I see that that's not in my 3D world. I've got other things as well, But it's also like, if we see these reflections of self in our relationships, but then also at a global scale, it's like, well, what? And it made me question, like, well, what else can I do, knowing how lucky I am, how blessed I am, the work that I've done for myself, my family? What else can I do in that context? I'm not going to be able to go in there and save the day, but
Mhm.
what I can do is talk about it, and the awareness. And something that Flea and I are excited about that just only came up really yesterday was, we have a gift and a platform to share. And we've got a beautiful guest on Monday, actually, because normally we go live on a Thursday, but this space to bring awareness to these threads that we've been talking about, but on a global scale. Well, how do we notice the conflicts that are happening at this level in other places and spaces, to families, to children? People are dying, and
Mm.
that happens every day. And there's many places around the world where these conflicts are real for people at another level, where their state
Mhm.
of being able to survive. We've spoken at our level and our experience of like hitting rock bottom. These people have actually hit rock bottom, homes crumbling around them, people injured, people dying, the trauma within their bodies, the trauma within the children that are experiencing this now. Just got goosebumps thinking about it.
Mm.
When we allow ourselves to actually talk to real people that are in this world, then perhaps that awareness of thinking of other is something that we can do. And this is why we love having guests on. We talk a lot about, self, other, well-being, education. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have Khalud on Monday. And for us, it'll be Monday, 8 p.m. And I think for her, it'll be 1 p.m. And she's like right there. She's right next to what's happening in Jordan. And I was listening to one of her Instagram posts, and just, I felt her heart. I felt,
Mm.
you know, just her speaking about stories as we do, about her life, about self, but then also that bigger vision of, well, what are we doing to the ripple effect of what's going to happen afterwards? There's so much damage and destruction, not only on the land, but in the hearts of all of those people that have survived. And we can reflect on our own lives, and it's not to compare, because everyone's journey is their journey, but how do we then become more compassionate and understanding, to just bring awareness, bring it to the surface, bring it to like to the forefront? Because media, this is probably why we love these spaces, because the media shows one side. When we talk into uh, points of view, different ways of looking at things with our
Mm.
guests or with ourselves, mainstream media doesn't look at that. So this is the beauty about it.
And as educators, like we've actually been trained in how to create these media productions. Like anyone that teaches English, you go through all the steps and the processes, and what is eliminated is for a purpose. Like every single thing that we're shown has been dictated to tell somebody's bias. And we see this in marketing as well, in businesses. Like, why are they targeting children when it comes to fast foods? It should be, a parent's choice to determine what's healthy for their child, but yet it's targeted at children that we just need to shut up because they're kicking and screaming and they don't know why. Well, they've been targeted through color theory, through the programmable colors of red and yellow of McDonald's. These are actually things that signify to a child excitement and interest. It's actually a brain signal that is sent to them inadvertently through the colors, through the positioning, through the little gimmicky cartoons and everything, to say, hey, look, this is the experience that you will get through this meal. And, like as an adult, we can sit there and go, oh, yeah, I can take it with a grain of salt. A child doesn't understand that. What they're seeing, and even as an adult, our brain doesn't understand the difference. What we see, what we focus on, what we perceive as entertainment And that could just be watching these movies that glorify war, watching things that, create this separation from the rest of the world. Like, I'm always under the assumption that, okay, if that is happening there, how long until it can happen here? And what are we doing to prevent that and to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes? Because we're now in what they're considering a World War III. Like, how on earth do we get to this point in time in the, we're still in the 21st century? I don't know how that one works, but whatever we're in, how do we get to this point with this amount of technology, this amount of understanding, this amount of science, medical professions? Like, we've got so much information, yet we're still making the same mistakes. We're not supporting our underdeveloped countries. We're not actually helping them to live sustainably. We're not providing them with the education. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll give you funds, and then you can create your gun bank or whatever it is that they do with that money, because it doesn't go to the people. We hear the stories of the people. It's shown on every single social media platform, and you can see how important it is when they get banned. And it's like, okay, that's what we're not seeing. And I've had, both sides thrown at me, both from, from both sides of the parties there. And you look at it and say, well, what do we believe? Who is in the right and the wrong? It's like, hang on a sec, it's human beings. Why are we fighting each other?
Yeah.
Like, literally, that, like, these innocent people that are just in their homes, they didn't cause the conflict. That's the political parties. Let them go sit in an arena and fight it out if they want a war. Like, why are they killing innocent people that had nothing to do with it? On both sides. Because no matter what, if you retaliate, you're still retaliating against innocent people.
Mm.
We don't get to choose. Well, we do get to choose where we're born, but, we that's a different show. But, in this reality where we are, or even where we've had to go for work, some of these people just move for work, just for a better opportunity to be able to survive, or because there was a need. Like, there's so many innocent people that had nothing to do with this conflict, that have nothing to do with the belief systems, or, the supposed rights to land that is everyone's. Like, nobody owns Earth. Who on earth dictated that it should be split in the first place? Like, we are one race, the human race.
Mm.
We have males and females, whatever we deem in between. We are one human race. We are all, yet we're divided. Oh, you're from the Philippines. I shouldn't talk to you because you're different. But you're from here. And even when I claim, like, I'm Australian, well, technically, if we go all the way back, no, my ancestors were brought here from a different country. A lot of them against their will too. So we talk about colonization being something bad. We have to remember that a lot of those convicts were people charged unfairly. You steal a loaf of bread because the country is in poverty and there's hunger and famine and disease running rife. I'd probably steal a loaf of bread to feed my family too, to not die. But they were all sent here, as punishment. And now we're still paying the price, like, how many 100 years later? It's like, okay, I didn't do that, but that happened to my generational family as well. And I feel the same for everybody in this situation, because we don't have a right to claim somebody else's property. We don't have a right to enforce our rules or our understanding or our expression on anybody else.
Mm.
And yeah, that's my political. We went down a political route. So
Yeah, we did a little bit. But I feel like when we talk to people and just hear their story as it is, like you
Yeah.
said, there is no right or wrong. That's their life. That's their experience, and if someone's happy to talk to us about their life, whether I'm not going to judge them. That's framed who they are, and the fact that they're open to talk, in this moment and time to share whatever their background, and that's a gift to learn, to be compassionate, and yeah, I'm excited to hear what's on Khulud's heart, because she talks about it a lot, and she is a coach and a leader in her own space as well, and just with what's going on, I think it's important that we hear more stories and hear people's hearts in this time. So, yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to end, because it just is a really core pillar for us to have heart-led people and leaders on our show. And whether it's sharing advice or doing something practical, just talking, there is, like I said before, there is medicine in the just the sharing and the listening. And it doesn't have to have an outcome. It is nice, but it doesn't have to. We don't have to fix you in this conversation and go, oh, I'm going to make sure I journal about that now. You know, it's not about that. It's about the dialogue and the conversation and
That's it.
that heart opening experience. So, thank you everybody for listening in today. And yeah, we look forward to. We've got 2 guests on next week. So, Kaluta's one on Monday night, 8 p.m. And we also have an amazing guest tuning in from Edinburgh on Thursday morning. And he has had some profound wisdom in his journeys and research, and what he's been called to do, looking at the Sabian mysteries and symbology and the celestial realms. It's fascinating. So I love that we get to speak with people from different parts of the world, all walks of life, just to share story.
So
Amazing.
exciting. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.